Hello, and welcome to Attunement. In this podcast, I, with the help of some of my powerful friends, will be exploring healing personal, intergenerational, and collective wounds, the side effects of oppressive power structures, activation of connection to spirit, oneness and awareness, and the intersectionality of it all. Let's connect the dots. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Attunement. Hi, guys. I know it's been a minute, and I first and foremost want to apologize for going off course of my schedule. I think I needed time to process. And no, I definitely needed time to process. I've been deeply in contemplation for the past, what is it now, 2 weeks, roughly, since Donald Trump was elected president again. And, I don't know. I feel like in that moment, silence meant a lot more to me than adding to the noise. I feel like everyone is obviously quite riled up, disappointed, pointing fingers, blame games, and I didn't really want to contribute to that. I didn't really want to be a part of it. I definitely reposted stuff on my stories because I still think, as I did before, that we're in the reckoning, y'all. We're in it, whether we like it or not. And I think that most of us in this collective, in the United States consciousness, we live in this place of denial or exceptionalism where things don't affect us directly. And I feel like the winning of the presidency by Trump is such a direct signal, as it was the first time, to the underbelly of this place and to what has been ingrained as a value in so many of its constituents. And those values are profit over people, economics as the driving force of policymaking and decision-making, which evidently ends up trampling human rights. And that's just kind of the way it goes, And when people want a thriving economy and can't look at things from a bird's eye view and see why the mechanisms have been put in place for so much division of thought and for so much ignorance to be what is accessible to most, and how that's all a tool of empire, and how that is the playing ground for fascism to take root or to reroot itself in a populace, because the underlying themes of fascism allow for the dehumanization of certain people so that there is a reclamation of economic standing for a minority. And when we look at the way that everyone voted, or the data that's been coming out about how different demographics voted, you can really kind of see how deeply indoctrinated so many are to believe that they are part of the billionaire class that is benefiting from the likes of a Trump presidency. And when we look at what, someone like Elon was able to do this time around, the fact that that man's not sitting in prison is proof in of itself that the system is just extremely fraudulent. And we're being hijacked by a bunch of criminals and con artists. And while I, in the past, have always focused on politics, and I do think it is still important in the sense that it a very real life affects everyday people. Local elections were extremely important. But what we're seeing right now is kind of a little bit unprecedented, where the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the executive branch now are all controlled by extremists and Republicans, because the Republican Party to me has become completely extremist. And it's interesting because when I have conversations with people who are Republican or who have voted Republican or who think that they're affiliated energetically with the Republican agenda, they like to separate themselves from the extremism of it And I think that that's the most damaging part of all of this is like when there's a two-party system and the proposed rhetoric of the party is so in alignment with the extremism that you claim to distance yourself from, you are subconsciously giving your power away into being siphoned to execute the most extreme version of the agenda. It is giving permission to the most extreme version of the agenda to continue to kind of like wantonly make decisions about the futures of a lot of us who either are not looking to be too involved with politics or have been so callously mistreated by the systems up until this point that they're just not even interested in participating anymore. And to a huge degree, I think that I was at a point of non-participation. You know, I did vote. I was in Florida. So the logic that I used and that I saw a lot of amazing organizers use during this election was just, you know, Florida is red no matter what choice I make, especially this time around. Statistically, up until the point that I voted, there was no way to sway Florida towards Kamala in any kind of capacity. So I did vote Green Party because I did have a dream that we would get to that 5%. And we didn't because of whatever reason, you know? And I think that our work now is to build a political party that's strong enough to contend with the two-party system once we go into another round of elections, if that gets to happen. Like I said, this is kind of an unprecedented climate and territory that we've never really been a part of, our generation. And so we played the fuck around a lot, and now we're about to find out. And a lot of the people who think that they made, you know, a courageous decision for their families because they were suffering economically don't even realize that they were suffering economically under Trump's own tax policy. And that's not up until 2025 and is obviously going to be reinstated into what he wants to do now, which is to cut more taxes for the billionaires, babes. And this is the thing is that, like, you know, most sycophants are completely manipulated by their emotional reactions to what's happening in their real lives. And while I have a basic respect for that in the sense that a lot of people really genuinely don't know better is what I'm realizing. When you're small-minded and when you have like a narrow belief that you are the only true nature of truth, you tend to kind of shut out other opinions and don't really allow for yourself to evolve your perspective. And so that's another thing that I've been running into when trying to have conversations with people about like why they vote against their own interests and trying to understand really, because when I was younger, obviously studied all of this stuff about the Holocaust and how it happened in World War II and how terrible it was. And of course we reenacted into Vietnam, and we've been occupying as business model for a very long time now. But, you know, the awakening happened slowly but surely. And mostly because of my own interest in understanding why things are the way that they are. Not everyone has that intention. And also not everyone has access to that information. Not everyone has even the inspiration to seek it out. And I think that that's kind of the main thing that I've been noticing is watching them privatize reality, our water, our food, our healthcare, taking care of one another, our housing, just kind of every single aspect of what it is to be alive. And watching them just do it in front of our faces and tell us it's the best thing for us. And so many of us agree with it. And so many of us don't even allow ourselves to imagine a better reality. And I think that's what I saw a lot of when Trump won. There's a lot of blaming going on about, oh, everyone who voted their party is at fault, or everyone who did this is at fault, everyone who did that is at fault. To me, the only people at fault are the people who voted for Trump. And to me, the people that are at fault are the people who balls to the wall endorsed him, which was a lot of people. To me, the ones at fault are the billionaires who are completely riling us up and completely turning us against one another successfully through their own applications, I might add. Because, you know, Zuckerberg is really out here making songs with T-Pain and being one of the guys because he knows that we're coming for them next. Like, he knows that all it's going to take is one. It's going to take this for people to really realize what's going on here. And I'm just at a loss, really, for how easily folks in the movement towards a better reality, those who do want a better reality and who are fighting for it every single day in the ways that they understand how, even the ways that we speak to one another and harm one another and degrade one another in the process of moral superiority. And it's why we've alienated so many people to begin with, in my opinion, from the left, is because we have this fucking arrogance that we are the only, that there's only a certain level of education that is qualifying of a position in this space. And I think that that is the worst, it's the worst place possible to be in, where the general American populace, all of the people who did vote for Donald Trump, are under the belief that Kamala is a communist, that Kamala's policy and that any kind of progressive policy is communism, in the sense of what, a la the Red Scare, bro, a la McCarthyism, a la like we didn't learn shit in academia and we're just going to repeat patterns. Like, what are we doing? And I'm watching us eat ourselves alive, trying to get to the bottom of who's to blame, all while these motherfuckers laugh to their central bank and collect off of these fucking wars and dangle fake ass ceasefires and promises and ultimatums that fall completely flat and are completely ignored and disregarded when the time to put their foot down comes into play. And here we are with the reality, right, that we need to contend with, that I feel like most of us are continuing to avoid and project and burrow ourselves further and further away from the reality that we're heading into. And it's going to take confrontation, y'all. It's going to take actually seeing what's going on and deciding for ourselves that this is not the world that we are going to allow our energy to create. Because each one of us showing up for our individual job every day, each one of us paying taxes, each one of us, and granted, I'm still in this wheel too with you. I'm not saying that we're not. We're all complicit in the wheel that we're talking about. But in the process of being complicit in the wheel, we have to take back our power, y'all. We have to take back our power. And I think that's where I'm at. I'm really excited actually to share all of these podcast episodes that are going to be coming out, because I didn't even realize it's kind of like a time capsule for myself and for all of you, hopefully, of like how to do that, how to wield back that personal power, how to call it back into yourself. I've been doing this practice with myself that I, off of the internet, learn all kinds of different modalities and stuff. But just the idea of bringing your peace back to yourself and severing any kind of cords or non-consensual or consensual or subconsciously consensual engagements with any entities, companies, beings that are siphoning your energy to do nasty work in the world. And just asking yourself to be severed of that so that you can operate with a clear mind. Because at the end of the day, we are what society is made up of. Each one of us individually, the way that we move, the way that we think, the way that we operate is all going to influence the world that we see around us and the ways that we see things come to fruition. If we continue to reward those who profit off of death, we continue to buy their products, and we continue to allow them to wage endless wars and like quite literally wipe people off the planet in these heinous, atrocious, ungodly, horrific ways in front of us on camera, like if we really let that be the way we go out, man, I just don't believe it. I just don't believe that enough of us are on that tip. I feel like so many more of us are on the tip of like, hey, yo, we really got to wake up and start moving towards creating a better reality for all of us, because we're all here coexisting symbiotically, whether we like it or not, We're all here regardless. And that's the thing that these white supremacists don't understand, is that no matter how much they try and how brutal even they are in trying to erase the indigeneity of this land, of this world, of our truths, the truth is we are the things that we poison. We are the water, we are the land, we are each other. And so when we do these things outwardly, we do them to ourselves. And it shouldn't need to come to your doorstep so violently for you to understand that you're next and for you to move with that awareness when you're in a ballot box. But I think that, again, this this choosing of Donald Trump. And I say choosing because I say choosing very loosely. As I said in previous episodes, I do not believe this was a choice that we made. There is no choice when there's gerrymandering and voter suppression and all kinds of white supremacist tactics to keep certain people's voices subdued and omitted from the conversation. And while puppeteering and uppeting and positioning people like Donald Trump to be in positions of power, I think it's beyond time for us to come to the same conclusion, which is that both of these parties work in tandem with one another to secure the perpetuation of powerlessness, so that those who are what they consider collateral damage or insignificant little dollar signs who walk around and will either give them money or not give them money, work for them or not work for them, we give that kind of a run for its money. It shouldn't be the only thing that gets to control everything that is. And I think it's beyond time for us to come to these conclusions. Even though, of course, we are some of the most propagandized individuals on the entire planet, the American populace. What I've been saying and what I had said all along the trail was, first off, I'm not voting for Biden. I was never going to vote for Biden because Biden is the embodiment of evil. Just evil energy. And the thing is, just because you do some things for Americans here and there, just to, solidify that you're not all the way evil, that doesn't necessarily mean that your intention is to actually help people. His presidency had nothing to do with making sure the American people were taken care of. His presidency was another step towards a second Trump presidency, because that's kind of what these Democrats and Republicans have been doing since their inception, since the beginning of Democrat versus Republican. Because at the end of the day, a democracy, first of all, is not only made up of a two-party system. In a democracy, you have a plethora of options that you get to choose from, and things like ranked choice voting, or, the abolishment of the electoral college, things like that would be in place by now if we actually lived in a functioning democracy. But we don't. We live in an oligarchy. I just heard an expert say this. We live in an oligarchy that has occasional elections every 4 years. And what I've also noticed from the elections is they're like energy siphoning rituals, is what I think. Like, we all get extremely riled up and forced into a combative space with one another, when the majority of us, and I say the majority because the white women and men who vote for Trump have a very different intention for voting for Trump than the Black or Latino or minority voter who votes for Trump, And this is the actuality of it. The reasons are very different, and the understanding of the impact is very different from, upper echelon human beings versus the average American, or those even in poverty, who have no idea what kind of impact it's going to have on their actual daily lives, and who are actually making these choices off of the very ill-informed concept that the economy was better when Trump was in office. Not considering what happened in 2020, not considering the fact that Trump inherited Obama's economy, not considering the fact that we're under Trump's tax plan from back when he was in office under Biden. And granted, inflation is a product of oligarchy. When you shut every single business down that's not a quote unquote essential business, and you consider McDonald's an essential business, but the DMV not an essential business, and you shut down an insane number of small businesses during this pandemic that we all endured, or, that are still enduring. But when the world shifted in 2020, when it happened, you have so many people who lost so much in 2020. And then on top of that, we had billionaires or upper echelon human beings siphon trillions of dollars of wealth from the middle class and the lower class back up into the 1%. And that's just kind of been trickling through these 4 years, and the effects are dire at this point. And, if you're not making money, you don't understand why you don't make money. You don't understand why eggs are more expensive. You're not understanding the reasons why. And ironically, Trump's tariffs are going to make it even more expensive. We think that inflation's going to go down, but it's absolutely the fuck not. These tariffs that he's intending to propose on Canada, Mexico, and China, 3 of our main importers of all the goods that we have out here in America, all of the things that we like to buy are made in China because American companies outsource their labor in other places where it's cheaper to hire people. Because in America, people don't work for nothing because you can't afford to work for nothing. And not only that, there's an arrogance, a deep arrogance that's filled in by the immigrants, that's filled in by undocumented folks. We live in a slave economy still to this day. And that's also evident in the rise of private prisons and the amount of prisons that are being built, the amount of money being siphoned into building prisons and building police forces and training police forces with military operatives. We are militarizing our police. We've been militarizing our police. They're trained by the IDF in tactics, which again, critical thought will have you led to a conclusion where what they're doing in Gaza, they're about to do right at home. You know what I mean? Cop cities are not being built for no reason. They're not training these cops to engage in urban warfare for no reason. They know a class war is coming. They know they're going to have to protect their property. They know they're going to have to protect their goods, their homes, their bodies, because you can only make a people so desperate before they start to realize who it is that they gotta get rid of. You know what I mean? But violence begets violence. You can't expect no violence when you are constantly with your foot on someone's neck and not allowing them to progress and not giving them any semblance of humanity in return. Or now we're dangling human rights in front of people. And again, this is why I feel like if Kamala would have been elected into office, so many people were so ready to bury their heads in the sand and forget. Her and Trump had very similar foreign policy, and this is where Kamala was a lot better at lying. Kamala's a much better politician. Kamala's a much better cop. Kamala's much better at convincing us that the whole girl boss thing was a vibe, but also she only had 3 months to campaign. And that was a fault of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party violated our right to due process, to democratic process of electing our own official for the Democratic nominee. In Florida alone, I was not allowed to vote for anyone besides Biden in the primary. The Florida Supreme Court mandated that only Biden was going to be on our ballot. And that already is the thwarting of a democratic process. I wasn't even able to vote for Marianne Williamson, who at the time I was wanting as the Democratic nominee, That was just me personally. And I feel like they overrode us, put Kamala in place. No one chose Kamala. Many people were ready to rally behind her, but many people were ready to rally behind her without questioning her approach at all, without demanding anything of her. Like, they promised us a ceasefire. They gave them 30 days that if she was put into office, she could have maybe executed, quote unquote. But that was a fucking lie. And that's what happens continuously, is a lie. And we'll acquiesce here if you acquiesce there. we'll give you this if you give us this. And that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't have to. She ran her entire campaign off of protecting reproductive rights. Why couldn't Biden do that while he was in office? Why didn't he make an executive order, especially now that he has the right to make official decrees and remain immune? Why would he not codify Roe v. Wade? Why would he not? And this is where we're at. Like, they keep dangling things in front of us like they can't get them done. And that is the Democrats' job, is to be like, yes, 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 we're promising all of this amazing stuff. We're going to cancel your student loans. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. And yeah, he did cancel some student loans. But he waited until he didn't have the Democratic majority anymore in the House and Senate to start trying to do these things. They didn't take advantage of the fact that they had a majority in the House. Excuse me, I don't remember if it was the House or the Senate. But they didn't take advantage when they had the opportunity to make decisions. And now, in retrospect, they're like, well, if you give us another chance, we'll do it. Why the fuck would they do it? Why would they do it? The Democrats are more committed to capital than anything else, because what liberalism does is it exonerates people on a surface level from having to contend with the ways in which protecting capital directly violate their decree that they are the most righteous of the two choices. At least Trump and his cronies are honest about who they are. At least. That's not to say the honest version of them is something that I condone, but I would rather be able to see the devil I'm dancing with. I would rather know who my enemy is because they're unabashedly within their truth about it than have lived through another 4 years of this deterioration of the middle and lower class, pretending like that wasn't what Kamala was going to do. And also, let's not pretend like they didn't choose this for us. Let's not pretend like this wasn't chosen for us. This place is not run by the people for the people. And if that is not abundantly clear at this point, especially after so much protest, the majority of us do not want our money spent the way that these administrations have been spending it. The majority of us want to take care of our own people. The majority of us don't want 1 million cops in our cities for protection. The majority of us don't want foreign wars that kill our people and their people alike. We don't want that shit. But they're still giving that to us like it's our choice and then blaming us for it. And we're blaming the people who are trying to bring about a better world. We're blaming the people who are so completely tired of being betrayed that they've decided to divest from these systems. You know, there was a 15 million voter difference between Kamala and Biden. 15 million Democrats either didn't show up or voted Republican or voted third party. Because Biden was put in by the progressive base in 2020. Biden was put in because of his promises that were socialist leaning. That is how he got into office in 2020. And he completely abandoned those principles and those ideals and those proposed policies. He completely abandoned that during his presidency. And the American people felt that. They feel the inauthenticity. They feel the lies. They feel the dismissal of their concerns. They feel forgotten. And that's what Trump speaks to as well, because he's an intelligent businessman, even though he's not a great one. He's still smart. He knows exactly what role to play. He plays ignorant, and he is a narcissist, you know, that does fuel his ignorance. But he knows his base. He knows who he's trying to get, and he knows who he's speaking to. And he won a lot of people over simply by saying, yeah, inflation's crazy. You guys can't afford to live. I'm going to do something about that. As if he was actually on your side. At least he pretends to know what the average American is going through. At least he pretends to know his base. Kamala and Biden abandoned their base. Their base was a progressive base that would have rather seen Bernie Sanders in office than a Hillary Clinton or a Biden. Both career politicians with extremely racist pasts and presents. Extremely racist. You know, this entire place is built off of that. There is no reforming it. There is no changing or fixing it. And I feel like, if nothing else, Trump being in office is going to solidify the fight against fascism. Because if girl boss, biracial cop would have been the one to do it, girl bossing fascism would have felt a lot better for the average person to be able to dismiss than having a white supremacist billionaire who, dictator. We have a dictator now. Like, we can talk all we want. We're going to see very clearly over these next 4 years what we have just done. And that's to say, when I say we, I just mean as a collective, because as evidently, we are an amalgamation of what we do. And a huge part of what we do is make sure that certain demographics don't have the right to vote. We see that with the disproportionate numbers and statistics about who is in prison and how people are invested in and whether or not people can be invested in. And that's not even remotely speaking to the amount of years that the US government has been actively genociding Native Americans and the descendants of the enslaved peoples that we had brought over here and that we created classes for as immigrants began to pour in from all around the world. And, you know, a very tired argument to me of like, well, if this place is so bad, why does everybody want to be here? Why don't they just stay in their own shithole countries? Because the United States, the CIA, and all of the alphabet fucking groups that they create have been destabilizing all of these countries all around the global south for years. Like, that is their entire ethos. That's the only thing that they spend their time on. And then we have a completely inflated Pentagon budget for military, budget for the war, of which they failed the audit every single year. Every single time they're audited, they fail it. So Lord knows where the fuck that money's going. You know, we're in a full-blown money laundering in front of your face at this point. And allegedly, just throw that in there for fun. And I feel like we're blaming the wrong people. You know, we're pointing fingers at the wrong people. We are trying to have this kind of self-righteous conversation is what I'm seeing a lot of people try to do, of like believing that they're morally superior to someone else because of how they voted. And the majority of the people that I talked to, even those who voted for Trump, they didn't want to vote for Trump. They just genuinely believed they only had a choice between Kamala and Trump, and they were not going to vote for Kamala because of their experience under the Biden administration and their ignorance in not only equating what happened under Biden's administration and blaming Kamala for it, because like, LOL, of course, like women, especially Black women / women of color, like absolutely get scapegoated for men's actions on a regular basis. So like that psychological phenomenon wasn't going anywhere, hasn't changed, you know? So not only are we obviously going to blame Kamala for everything that Biden did, things that were completely out of her control up until they weren't, you know? But they weren't going to vote for her because, like I said, the Democrats abandoned their progressive base to try to lean and bring in sane Republicans, you know? But they obviously, as they always do, underestimated how fucking racist, sexist, and greedy the American people are. Because essentially, like, the only argument that I heard for why folks voted for Trump, like, not the only one, but like the main one, there's two main ones. One is there's an immigrant problem, we got to fix it. He's the only one talking about fixing it, which is, first of all, a lie, because Kamala was very pro make the border safe and is a literal attorney general who's actually done prosecuting. The thing is that most Americans don't understand the immigration process or the asylum process or how it works. So, you know, especially my white Cubans who have a lot of exceptionalism in this department specifically, Because it kills me when I hear immigrants speak down on other immigrants. It actually makes my mind boggle, because I'm like, how the fuck do you have this audacity when like you are literally in the same boat, or were in the same boat, and just now aren't? Like, how can you so easily believe in your own entitlement like that? It just is mind-boggling to me. But not only that, it was because of the economy. It was because under Biden, even though they're not understanding that it was Trump's fault, under Biden, they couldn't afford to live. And things got more and more and more and more expensive. The cost of living has gotten more and more and more and more expensive. And AI is destroying the job market and is completely unregulated and destroying our planet. Like, there's just so many layers to this shit that I'm sick. But all of that to say, it is a more potent time than ever for us to begin to create the world that we want to see. Linking up with each other, calling things out, dismantling relationships and connections that don't get it, that are part of the old paradigm and are going to stay in the old paradigm and are not ready to ascend into this new reality, into this new earth. Both are going to exist at the same time for a while. And I want my focus to be much more on the creation process than it is on the destruction process. I've been in deep depression and sadness and like the weight of everything. And while that is part of the process, you know, I don't want to deny myself how I feel, or even the weight of the reality that we're all entering into. Like, I don't want to deny that, because I think that that's also dangerous, to deny what's about to come. I think it's very dangerous. I actually would highly recommend reading The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, and its sequel, which is even more telling to me about this moment and what it can become. You know, The Handmaid's Tale, The Parable of the Sower, The Parable of the Talents is the sequel, by the way. Like, these kinds of quote unquote science fiction novels that were written by these women were all written with an imagination about, if things continue the way they are right now and folks don't do something actively to stop it, this is the kind of world that can come to be. And this is the world that's coming to be as we speak. And we might deny that, and it might feel better and safer and cooler to deny that, you know? And New Age spiritualism will definitely have you denying your impact on others and, you know, going into yourself to heal yourself. And while, yes, that's valid, and we need healed people in order to heal more people, you know, like, it is a super valid part of the process. The denial of the reality of the world that we live in is a huge issue, because us ignoring it, or us choosing a higher vibration by not looking at it, or not speaking out against it, or actively trying to stop it in whatever ways that we personally can, you know, that are within our true means. Because, yeah, we do have to survive. But what are we surviving? You know? What are we surviving? And why are we trying to survive it? Because the systems that are at play right now do not benefit a single person who makes it up, who holds it up. It is strictly a situation being created to support those who sit on top of it. It's a pyramid scheme. Trickle-down economics is not real. And if you look at any statistic, the amount of money that a CEO makes has what? I don't actually have the literal statistics, so let me not throw a number out, but like, you can go look it up. That shit is like quadruple, 10 times what it was in the 50s, you know? And that's for white people. And that's for white people, because that also does, and that's for white men most likely, because it doesn't consider that most CEOs are and have been in the amount of years, in the amount of those years, white men, you know? And if they're not white men, they're white men with a person of color's face slapped on it, because that person just gets to benefit from white supremacy up until the point. where they're no longer needed, you know? So I say all that to say, I hope and pray that we continue to find each other, that we find what it is our heart is telling us to do in this moment and to honor it, and to stop blaming one another and learn to come together, even if we have a range of differing opinions about things, and calling in people who need to be educated further, challenging these things in ways that honor their humanity and the confusion and fear that they live in. Because I don't really believe that folks are as evil as they vote. I don't think folks are as evil as the most extreme side of their spectrum, you know? I think a lot of folks live in a more central space, or an indifferent space, or a confused space, really. From my conversations, that's what I really see, is that folks are really uneducated, really unaware of the truth, and are really susceptible to brainwashing, you know? And that's not by accident. That is not by accident. I want y'all to look up what the CIA has always been up to. They literally, this is literally the only thing their job requires them to do, is to destabilize progress in the sense of dismantling capitalism for what it is. Because capitalism is not sustainable. It is going to kill us all, even the ones sitting on top of it. Because once the planet doesn't have any more clean water or clean air or the ability to grow food, because our cycles are all messed up, because we've decided to trash our home, you know, and extract so much without replacing it, things that are not renewable, you know, like, it's just, we're just going to continue in the same cycle. But I really firmly believe that this is the beginning of the end of the cycle. Like, Trump coming into presidency is going to do something really serious, where once things really start to go down, because they're already going down. They haven't even fucking started, but they're already going down. Once we really see what Elon having a fucking cabinet position is going to really do, we're about to wake up in a really harsh way. And that's what we need. As much as we don't want it, as much as we wish we could avoid it, that's what we need. We need to wake up. We need to fight harder. It's going to get really hard to fight, too. But we have to fight, you know what? Not harder. We need to fight smarter. We need to use these systems against themselves, really, is my opinion. And taking out a couple billionaires probably wouldn't hurt. Allegedly. But alas, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to build new worlds. I feel like I already have been. I feel like most of you have too. But taking this to wherever you can, staying grounded, staying protected, all of these things are going to be so important over the course of these next years ahead of us. I want to say the next 4 years, but I already know how it's going to go. I already know. You get a dictator in with a conservative Supreme Court and a Republican House and Senate, no checks and balances, we're cooked. The system that we knew is cooked. And I think it needs to burn. So let it cook, as they say. Let it cook. But it's gonna be a burnt meal. It's not even gonna be a cute meal that comes out of this. But that's kind of the way of the universe too, man. Creation and destruction live in the same breath. It's how we're all here. And so I hope this was worth the wait. Probably isn't. It was just a rant mostly, but I am now back on schedule, and you will be receiving another episode next week that begins the archives. So I look forward to seeing you next week. And as always, keep yourself attuned and as love as possible. And as centered in love as possible. Center yourself in the truth and in love.